analyst talking about numbers for a fund, an investment fund out here in Omaha, Nebraska. Great job. I enjoy doing what I do. But honestly, it is a far cry from what I wanted to be when I was growing up. I wanted to work for the United Nations, and I'll tell you why. For Toastmasters, I'd like to share a story about family and sacrifice and forgiveness. I grew up in Ghana, in West Africa, as many of you know, in a family foster care system. The peculiar thing about my case was that my father lived less than 10 miles from where I lived, and yet I couldn't live with him. My parents were busy fighting when I was a baby. They broke up, so obviously I moved away with my mom. But at that time, our culture really frowned on a woman raising a man. It wasn't westernized at that time. So at the age of 3 months, I was whisked away to go and live with my dad. Now, it wasn't easy for him. He was a naval officer, a young naval officer, a lieutenant, raising a 3-year-old boy and a 3-month-old boy. After a while, he realized it just wasn't going to work, so he needed help. And so he ordered a new wife from hell. My stepmom, the quintessential stepmom, she was mean. Life started deteriorating for us at a very fast pace. My father, who was traveling all over the world, started hearing all these stories from different people that were unpleasant. He got tired of it, and that's how we ended up with his cousin. Unfortunately, living with his cousin was actually worse than living with our stepmom. So you would understand if I had some bitterness in here for the old guy. When I completed middle school, I lived up to my name. I aced the high school entrance exam, got into a prestigious boys' high school in Ghana. Very competitive, highly competitive. The high school is known to produce a lot of great men, and we all waiting on me becoming a great man. My dad also got admitted into a prestigious naval commanders program in a university in Denmark. I was happy for him. We were talking about it, and surprisingly, he said that he was going to turn down that opportunity. And this was going to put him on track to become the chief of naval staff, the highest ranking officer in the country's navy. But he turned it down. His reason, he wanted to be there to structure my high school education. That changed my thinking about the guy. I realized that if we were in an alternate universe, if the stars lined up, talking about numerology, this guy would have been a great dad. Conditions were just not conducive. So he turned it down and he stayed for my high school education. When I was in high school, Kofi Annan was appointed the United Nations Secretary General. Now, that was huge. The hype that came with that. The first Secretary General from sub-Saharan Africa. So obviously, a lot of the young boys in that high school, Kofi Annan went to my high school, by the way. A lot of the boys there, we looked up to him and we also wanted to be like him. We wanted to go all the way. For me, I wanted to go to the United Nations and follow in his footsteps. I shared this with my dad, and surprisingly, he said that he also wanted to work for the United Nations. In fact, he was thinking about retiring early from the Ghana Navy and going to work for the United Nations. So we had something in common. We all wanted to serve humanity. Anyway, let's fast forward 7 years. I graduated from high school. I came to the US. I graduated from college. I applied to the United Nations and I got a job. I actually got that dream job. I was given this job to be a junior statistician. That was a very good point to start and move up from there. It was pretty much the most exciting day in my life. I was so happy. I grabbed my phone to share this information with my dad. When he picked the call, the man was so excited. I had not said one word. I was asking myself, why is he so happy? I haven't said anything. Is he a psychic? Does he know what I'm going to say? Why is he so happy? That was when he dropped the bombshell. He said that he had been offered a United Nations job. Now, how often does that happen? He said, you remember when you were in high school, we were talking about working at the United Nations? Well, I got the job. He was going to be the chief of intelligence for United Nations in the whole of West Africa. That was a big deal. So I just dropped back into my chair. I couldn't believe it. See, the problem is that the United Nations doesn't allow two people from the same nuclear family to work for them at the same time. So a dad and a son cannot work at the same time. Couples cannot work at the same time. Siblings cannot work at the same time. I congratulated him, ended the call, and then I thought about when he sacrificed his Denmark trip because of my high school education. And so I turned down the job. Unbelievable. I turned down my dream job for him. Throughout this time, I fixed my relationship with my dad. I learned a lot about family. He went on to the United Nations and did great things for them. He worked with Kofi Annan and so on. I learned about forgiveness and sacrifice. I told myself, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I also had a change of focus, and that was very important to me, that I'll probably never work for the United Nations, but there are 1,000 other ways that I can serve humanity. Mr. Toastmaster.